On top of the Hill House loomed like a guardian of the dark past, silhouette piercing the delicate mist of the valley beneath its worn facade. By decades of neglect and storms appeared in the dim moonlight to ripple shattered windows that looked like bacon eyes. The house had served as a topic of whispers in the surrounding, tales of bizarre things from the village of Blackwood, sounds, brief shadows, and chilly breezes that were passed down from nowhere, children daring to act like ghosts in folklore, climbing the overgrown trail together, but to turn back when the towering iron, the gates appeared to moan in protest on this calm evening in October, that there was a strong smell of dampness. One light from the earth and decomposing leaves flashed in the east wing window, a wing left untended for more than 50 years. Historian Eleanor Harper has an inclination to reveal S.E. Sesset gripped the journal in her hands, which was leather-bound, as she gazed at the safety's light. She had come to Hill House to get rid of her automobile, compose its narrative to distinguish fact from fiction, but as the darkness became darker, as she felt a chill creep in, ideas for amid the quiet of the house, something appeared to move as if it was not anticipating an invader, but for Harper, or her Ellen, had always been attracted to abandoned locations, as a historian with expertise in architecture in the past. She viewed buildings as more than only structures, but as memory conduits, each the whispers of the brick and beam people who had died and lived inside of their walls, and her interest in Hill. When she stumbled a year ago, house began, on a vintage photo in a dusty, the library preserved the 1928 picture that showed in its heyday, Hill House was a magnificent estate, with immaculate gardens and busy servants, and a 5-member family standing with pride on the front stairs. But something was strange about the youngest's picture kid. A 6-year-old girl was averting her eyes from the photographer, focused on someone or something just outside that picture stayed with Eleanor. Urging her to delve more, she discovered pieces of the Hill houses, the terrible demises of its final residents, enigmatic disappearances, and reports that the house is cursed by a family, having been left untended for many years, its ownership involved in court cases, and its standing with prospective customers at bay is currently in front of the wrought iron gates. Eleanor experienced an odd mixture of she had been filled with dread and exhilaration. Given authorization to record that her study was financed by a local, the Historical Society is keen to conserve. Her strategy for what was left of Hill House was merely explore the house for a week, listing its treasures and assembling collectively. It's the gates squeaked open in the story with, and pushing hard reveals a winding, the path made of gravel that led to the front. The house was even bigger at the entryway, shut down its imposing columns and elaborate brickwork that suggests a formerly magnificent previously. The temperature was lower here, and the only thing that shattered the heavy silence was the Elaw's boots crunching on the. There was a period when the house had gravel. Dusty's capsule of grandeur and decay, chandeliers were suspended from elaborate ceilings. The dim light is caught by their crystals, of her lanterns peeling, fading wallpaper hidden in lengthy strips that display layers of the furniture covered in forgotten colors. White sheets appeared like specters of the past, their silhouettes that suggest lives Elena used to reside here and set her up. The large dining room's work area, where a lengthy table extended under an lavish yet tarnished chandelier that she tools, including a notepad and laptop camera, didn't belong with the elderly backdrop. She unlocked the leather-bound journal that her mentor had given her, and she started to illustrate the chamber. But while she worked, a strange feeling descended upon her. It was as if despite a house watching her, its silence is now expectant rather than passive. The tiny footfall reverberated from the second level is too planned to be. The moans of an elderly house, most likely just the wind, she whispered, but the words felt as the days went by. Eleanor's research produced some amazing findings. She discovered letters concealed within books, Faded photos and concealed a set of keys and chambers that each artifacts unlocked forgotten rooms, narrated a tale, but no one had any answers. The reasons for the questions that plagued her. Had the household left the residence, and where the girl had gone in the take a picture one night while she was exploring one section of the house that is sealed is the East Wing. Off since Eleanor's night in the 1950s, discovered the air in a child's bedroom. It was tinged and colder here, with a subtle lavender aroma. The bed was formerly leaning against the wall. The vibrant fabric has faded and been eaten by worms. There were toys all over the floor, and a rocking horse made of wood sat still. Within she discovered a diary in the dresser's corner. Owned by Lily, the youngest of her siblings of the family, the entries started recounting games innocuously played during summer picnics and among siblings. However, the tone changed as Eleanor continued to read. Of shadows that moved on, Lily wrote their own nighttime whispers, and of a man who told her in the mirror, "Secrets, the last entry made me shudder." Down Eleanor's spine, according to the man in the mirror, where he claims that the house belongs to Eleanor now, closed the diary she was keeping. Breath that could be seen in the freezing air as she returned it to the dresser. A rocking horse crept along in a gentle motion as, despite being pulled by an invisible, she took a step back, her heart racing, and said to herself that it's simply the wind. But she knew in her heart Eleanor was unable to get rid of the feeling that she wasn't alone in Hill anymore. The eerie conclusion of the diary NT and the mysterious motion of she gives her logical mind a rocking horse nod. She attempted to brush off her discomfort as fatigue or the role of her imagination. She was tricked, but the home had a method of claiming that it won't allow her to ignore it. Eleanor's appearance the next day centered on listing products in the once opulent drawing room is now covered with shadows and dust between the bookshelves that are disorganized and stained. Candelabras found a little box. Of most of the photos were ordinary family photos, excursions, holiday festivities, but one stood out because it showed a towering and harsh standing in a room's corner. She didn't acknowledge that his face was somewhat shadow obscured, but his presence was sensed incorrect, as if he didn't belong in Eleanor placed the picture in the frame. Her diary with the intention of studying later, but she was about to shut the box when she froze when a knock reverberated around the room. "Hello," her eyes darted to the doorway. She raised her voice. Shivering, she stepped in silence, taking a deep breath. She cast her lantern into the hallway. Shadows on the walls that flash. The home appeared to hold its breath, tight with stress. When she arrived to the big staircase's base has a dim, soft music floated down from above. Sultry and utterly out of tightened her hold on the lantern. Every step she took as she ascended the stairs, the music intensified as she creaked under her weight, increasing volume, guiding her to a chamber she hadn't investigated. But the door was a little off balance, and the melody began to play as she pushed it open. Suddenly halted, the room's walls were being studied. LED with its focal point and bookshelves. The keys on a grand piano have yellowed with age. Eleanor gingerly went to her heart. She rubbed her fingertips over the thumping. The surface of the piano disturbs a layer of dust and saw that one key was pressed down before she had a chance to comprehend what she was witnessing. The door behind me slam. She whirled her Eleanor around her lantern, casting warped and swinging madly. "Who is that in the shadows across the room?" Urged her to speak, breaking just the sound of her. No response. The air was filled with her own quick breathing. Rushed with trembling hands to the door. She struggled with its handle. Wouldn't move. She felt a wave of panic. However, as abruptly as it closed, the door opened with a squeak. Own Eleanor staggered, returning to her thoughts was racing in the corridor. And she wanted to go in order to avoid the home's ambience, but her resolve to reveal its secrets kept her firmly planted so she couldn't abandon. However, She had a restless night's sleep, nightmares were eerie figures, and she awoke to the disembodied whispers that footsteps outside her room. She opened the door after grabbing her lantern to discover the corridor deserted, but on the floor that led out of her room was moisture-soaked footprints that vanished into the Eleanor tracked their pulse in the dark. The prints guided her to the east while sprinting. A wing with a lower temperature and a deepening quiet. As she got closer to Lily's, a soft giggle reverberated around the room. Hallway, she opened the door and the rocking horse was moving, and I gasped. Rhythmically, creak filled in there was Lily's diary open on the bed. Eleanor approached a blank page. Words started to show up on the paper, composed by an invisible, remove your hand while you Eleanor, might the lantern flicker. She turned when she sensed someone behind her, yet only the oppressive people were present. The shadows of the hallway, her determination wavered. Hill Housey couldn't deny it any longer. Was alive and observing. The sound of the wind roused Eleanor, wailing in the hallways. Despite the Hill House window had been securely. The atmosphere felt more charged and heavier, with the force pressing up against her, like a burden on her chest. She realized she had to face whatever had established itself here, if not for her studies. Then for her personal, she brought her lantern and a journal while returning to Lily's. The house seems to direct her in this chamber. The well-known creaks of the planks were put in by a ghostly. Every shadow she passed felt silent, deeper in every nook and cranny. Sitting on the bed, suffocating the diary, the hurriedly written warning is still visible. She hesitated, glaring at her, but curiosity pushed her forward, causing her to flip. She saw something on its pages. She hadn't before done a whole segment. It was scribbled in a trembling, desperate hand, and described the last days of the family's life in how the father Walter lives in the Hill residence. Blackwood was now fixated on a mirror within his. He believes that studying Lily's comments was chilling. He sees things from the man in the mirror. The father refuses to let the mother go. The man says that we all belong here, so let's now. Eleanor's pulse quickens in the mirror as she remembered the picture of the unmarked study door and the shadowing man she had gone by multiple times without. She had already rejected it before entering, but now, like an open wound, it called to her, pleading to be when she got there. The door was at the room beyond was jarred by an unusual blow within. The elaborate mirror was taller than any person she had ever seen. Its gold-plated frame is evidence of age has tainted the luxury, shimmered on the surface but did not reflect, rather than her or anything in the room. It portrayed the Blackwoods frozen in a parent sitting in an uncomfortable tableau. The older kids stood rigidly, Lily in the middle and behind them holding Eleanor. The doll gasped as the figures started to move, turning their heads moving in unison, their eyes hollow. They shouldn't be here, locking onto hers, stated in a voice different from their own choir of pain, and suddenly the room seemed to twist with malice. The air expanding and the walls closing in. Eleanor fell back, colder, but the mirror's reflection stayed standing still and gazing at her with a display of composure. She didn't feel what you want, she said in a whisper, a voice that could hardly be heard over the roar of. She had blood in her ears. And music, the reflection's smile and current motions, separate from her own to keep in mind, to continue to ripple the mirror's surface. Like Eleanor's reflection and water, went through and solidified into a dark figure with her face, but without any her warmth before she had a chance to respond. Its cold hand seized her as it lunged at her, grabbing her by the wrists and bringing her near the glass. No, she sobbed, battling the incredible strength. However, the draw of the shadows was unrelenting. In a desperate last act, Eleanor snatched up the lantern and destroyed it. Flames burst against the mirror, gnawing on the gilded frame, while its form was obscured by shadow and dissolved into a smoke, caused the mirror's surface to break. Breaking out into a web of broken, the mansion appeared to have grown in reflections. agony the shuddering of the walls as though Eleanor let out a long breath and stumbled. The flames were creeping outside the room. Behind her as she devoured the research and the mirror curse, she continued to dash inside till she was outdoors as the refreshing night air filled. Behind her hill house, her lungs stood dark and silhouetted against the flames. At last, secrets of being reduced to ash, Eleanor was standing at the hill's edge. The coolness of the night air against her flushed hill house was completely destroyed by fire. Its skeleton form was lit up in the suffocating orange and red flickering burden that has been bearing down on her since her arrival disappeared and was replaced by an old lightness, as though the home has at last emitted its L, which contained secrets in the she held Lily's diary close to her at night. Chest, the sole artifact she had successfully to preserve the feel of the little leather-bound book, heavier now, with pages brimming with realities that nobody would take Eleanor seriously, pondered if she ought to tell the tale. Alternatively, allow it to fade into the ashes with the house. As the building was destroyed by the fire, she believed she heard faint whispers. As the breeze carried her whispers, she was unable to read the words, yet they didn't perceive any threat. Rather, they conveyed a sense of comfort, as though the hill house's spirits had been released at. The fire lasted till the early hours of the morning. When the sun first appeared in the morning, a house's ascent was merely a still. Eleanor watched the blazing ruin. The smoke curls toward the sky as it gets brighter, until the initial responders arrived. A firefighter reported what transpired. His voice broke the somber silence as he questioned. Eleanor paused in silence before she responded. Keeping her eyes on the burned stay, it was a mishap, she added quietly. House that refused to remain. The firefighter gave her a piece of curious expression, but remained silent. Additionally, Eleanor departed the hill with Lily's a sense of finality and a journal in her purse. She wasn't prepared, but while driving, she was caught in the rearview mirror. For a time, she thought, attention, she noticed a figure's faint shape. A young girl is seated in the back seat, holding a doll in her hands, her eyes wide, and Eleanor blinked, alert, and the figure was gone, and the path ahead extended into. The horizon was illuminated by the gentle glow of a fresh day as Eleanor continued to drive away from the hill house. Ashes are fading into the distance. She was unable to overcome the having the impulsion that certain open never really get question have comfort get close, and that maybe the house has just discovered a novel method to